A newly seated councilman skirts copyright law and steals intellectual property, my intellectual property, to get elected. And his newly seated buddy apparently thinks that it's not only okay, but it's kind of funny. And why the No Kings movement and some very questionable behavior means Toney King isn't fit to be Benson's mayor. Stolen valor, anyone? Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. I am Jeff Oldfather, your host for this episode of the Southwest Center podcast. We've got a lot to get to, and we're going to start with Toney King, who was Benson's mayor for 8 years, and now he's running again. He's had his shot at it, and he frankly didn't do a very good job as mayor. And Tony is the kind of person that kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth. I was going to use another word, but you don't really know where he stands on major issues, and the ADI issue is one of those. We'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to refer to some notes here. First of all, let's deal with the elephant in the room, ADI, and Toney King's stand on that. Toney King toured, and I have this firsthand from an official of ADI. He toured the site, and which is a good thing. He should have if he was going to be a candidate. But he told the official that was giving him the tour, and I'm not going to use that official's name, but he said I could refer anyone to him to confirm this. So this is straight from the source. He told that official that he supported ADI 100%, thought it would be good to bring it into the community and would provide jobs. Okay, that's what he said. But then he did an interview, and it's on YouTube, and anyone who wants to can look it up. Just Google Toney King interview on YouTube. At 2:53 in this interview, he does a 180 and says to the interviewer, if the plant does come, we've got to figure out if we can stop them. So, Tony, which is it? Do you support ADI being here or do you not? If you're elected mayor, are you going to talk to the public with one stand and on the other hand, say something entirely different? Now, how can you trust someone, and this goes to the general issue here, how can you trust someone to lead the city when they talk out of both sides of their ass? I mean, come on, Tony, let's get with it. How are you going to tell people one thing in your public statements and then work against them behind the scenes? Signed affidavits, and this is very serious. I have several affidavits that are signed from Benson residents and officials about Tony's military service. He's told people, and this is in these affidavits, that he served in the military, but there's no record because he served classified operations, black ops, so-called special operations. I have that from 4 people who put their signature to it, okay? Tony was in the military. We did a deep dive into the background check, and he served for less than 90 days, and he didn't make it to basic. But he never served black ops, and he never did any classified operations. But apparently he's had no problem telling people that. Well, that's a pretty serious example of stolen valor. Do you want that kind of person running the city? Tony, why do you think you have to do that? Also, as of this podcast recording, I have 3 sources that Tony is delinquent on his Benson utility bills. And on his campaign signs, it says paid for by the committee to re-elect Toney King or elect Toney King. But at the time he put up the signs, no such committee existed. He only formed the committee after he was called out on it. Now we're going to examine a couple of major issues that Tony screwed up on when he was mayor, and I have a special guest joining me who has some good perspective and can offer some exclusive insight into how Tony was when he was mayor. And I want to thank you, Pat Boyd, for joining us. You served on the city council for 13 years.
That's correct, yes.
How many years with Tony?
Over half, anyway. It'd probably be about 9 years or so.
All right. I asked you to come in. I appreciate you doing this because, people are going to wig out all of the, I call them now the haters, the supporters of Kaplowitch and Mark Boyd.
Yeah, Boyle, yeah, my brother,
Boyle,
yes.
yeah. I drew a blank there.
That's okay.
And a lot of other people who have been very vocal on Facebook, but I'm going to do a little imitation because I think they're haters. I've just finally come to that conclusion. They will name call, they will lie, they will do whatever they have to do to put people down. So, that's what you're going to do, right? You're going to be haters. So that's fine. You be haters all you want because we're going to work at this a lot so that the true stories get out there. But anyway, you served Toney King when he was mayor. Is he qualified to be mayor?
That's questionable. He, back during the time when we first started out, he had health issues and things of that nature, and he really was, had a disability going at that time. After his surgeries and stuff, he got better, but it seemed as though that he was more interested in talking and instead of, and he would talk something to death as opposed to actually getting something done. And so that was one of the things that was, kind of a negative.
Well, there was a major issue involving furlough.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a lot of controversy over that. Will you kind of lay the basics for what that was all about? It had to do with some budget mismanagement.
Well, yeah, it's yes and no.
I don't mean mismanagement in a criminal way. I mean mismanagement, just not paying attention.
Yes. Well, so what, they were caught in some, one of these perfect storms, where we just did come out of, the recession that was in 2008 and, went through to about 2010 and 11 in there. And so we had a lot of difficulties from that. The revenues for the city were way down. But then, shortly after that, we went into, the COVID thing. It wasn't too much longer after that. In any case, we ended up with some shortfalls where we were not bringing in the amount of money that we had anticipated, and so the only option that we really had was to curtail the workforce, which was very difficult, and it actually was very punishing to the city, and not only to the individuals themselves, but to the city itself.
So this is about 2020.
Somewhere in there, yes.
Okay, and you had two choices for lower layoffs.
Exactly. So, yeah, exactly. So
Toney was mayor.
Yes, yes.
So it's a strong mayor form of government, so he has a lot to say about calling the shots.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's the way the government's set up in Benson. We, the mayor has a lot of say in what gets done and the final decision and things. So anyway, but the one of the things that happened was, as opposed to the layoffs, we did lose some good, highly trained officers who couldn't afford the extra day off. They had to have that money for their families and so on, so they had to leave. And so we had some well-trained officers who ended up leaving. We also had some staff members that were, very valuable to the city that had the same problems. They had to end up leaving. So this, it really was a real detriment to the city.
So what decision was made, and why did that spark so much controversy?
Well, the decision was made to
furlough.
To do the furloughs, yeah. There was no, there wasn't very many options that were, viable. So we went ahead with the furloughs because it did at least have the ability to hold on to as much as the staff as we could, and who could afford it. And a lot of the staff, some who couldn't afford it but stayed anyway because they're good, loyal, Bensonites. They wanted to stay, they wanted to help, and they wanted to do whatever they contribute to the problem. And it was very helpful. And there's some really outstanding people in the city. The city staff has currently a really good staff right now, so we're doing good.
Well, Pat, why would we lay blame or criticism with Toney King over how that whole thing was handled?
I don't know if we could lay all the blame on him. I mean, in some of these things, these circumstances were things that just came up.
Everyone shared in it.
Exactly. And, this. So I should probably point this out. A lot of times, because of the strong mayor, a lot of decisions and things that are going on, inside information and stuff, down to all the rest of the council. Some of it just stays with the mayor. And some of these decisions that, something we put on the agenda for a vote, and we won't have all the information that the mayor actually has. And it happens all the time, and it's nothing any terrible thing, but it's some of these things, the mayor may have interviewed with somebody and talked to somebody, a CEO or something along that nature, or has inside information from somebody who called him and talked to him. So that, information that they have is unique to them. And so we don't always have all of that available to us.
You mean we, the council?
We as in the council, yes. So, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I mean, there's not everything that, you can't say everything to everybody all the time. So anyway, that's some of those decisions. So, I don't want to second guess Toney too badly, but there's some things that could have changed, you bet.
What were they?
Well, I'm thinking that in some of these things you could see in advance. You couldn't see COVID and the shutdown in advance, but you could have seen the slowdown in the markets and stuff, especially in 2008 and after that.
Well, what I'm saying is the leadership. You're telling me the leadership wasn't there.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It takes a little bit of insight into what's actually going on. So, you have to be paying attention to the markets and things of that nature on a broader scale than just our little Benson. You have to be looking at the state economy, the federal economy, our government economy throughout the United States. And those signs were pretty obvious. They were there. You could see that things were turning south, and there was no preparations made. We just kept on going headlong into it, and as if nothing was going to change, instead of preemptively doing things that would have eased that the situation in the future, that came up later.
So what brought the city out of that situation? How long did it take, and what role did Toney play with his leadership?
Well, I can't say that there was anything that was necessarily done by him that actually caused us to come out of it. It was a natural evolution. The economy started picking up. People started coming back to Benson. Tourism and all those things that we could count on started coming back. But it took months and months, a couple of years for it to get back to where it was. And so, but nothing specific that Toney did that actually caused that to happen. It just was a natural occurring event.
Okay, then your issue with Toney is, again, we were talking before the podcast, lack of leadership or clear leadership.
That's correct.
All right. What other issues? There were some other issues that came up. Well, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
More recently, and I just learned this, Toney came to you prior to the recall and said that you were one of his guys.
Oh, yeah.
He was totally with you and would be with you to the end. What happened after the recall?
Well, the very next day, he was talking with one of the individuals here in town, a business owner here in town, and it was a friend of mine, and told him specifically, "Oh, all my people won." Well,
which is
am I not on that list? Anyway, so that kind of hurt a little bit, because I counted him as a friend, and then he tells somebody else, without my knowledge, that all my people won. So it wasn't me.
I'll say it, since you seem to be very diplomatic. You either say one thing and stick by it, or you don't. And so you don't tell people one thing and then turn around and do the other right behind their back.
Well, yeah,
that's opportunistic.
It is very much so.
It's not illegal.
No, I have some other examples, but I'm not going to go there. But there are some things that I've seen in Toney that were very on similar lines, that were hard to understand.
Let me ask you this.
From my point of view.
Okay, let me ask you this. The splash pad.
Yeah.
Toney King, I think, is rightly proud of the role that he played in getting that. But in the beginning, and there's a little bit of controversy surrounding this as well. In the beginning, I think it was about $500,000 that it was estimated to cost. It ended up costing more than $1 million.
Yes.
Why did that happen?
Well, several things happened. That was the COVID shutdown. We simply couldn't find a contractor that'd be willing to work. I mean, nobody would even, we put out, RFPs for, bids and things on the project, and got no responses. Contractors were just unavailable, and consequently, whether it was through inflation or whatever else,
costs skyrocketed.
Costs went way up. We couldn't find cement contractors to save our bottoms, and we had a terrible time finding anybody to work. We were very lucky in getting a contractor that actually did the job. It was an outstanding job. But I'd like to point out that the splash pad and all the park improvements, I've been on the council, like I say, for 13 years, and as long as I've been on that council, that park has been on the agenda. That the master plan of the park was originally done done shortly after I was on the council. I mean, so for a long time, at least 10 years, that's been on the, on the docket to get done. And for different reasons, it's been held back. Some are, usually just financial reasons. But so for Toney to say, yeah, this is my, my jewel here, well, it's been on the agenda for a long, long time. And, I can't say for a fact that, he didn't have something to do with it prior to that. But the city staff and many others worked very hard on that project, and to have it come to fruition the way it finally did is not any one individual's,
Well, I appreciate the fact that you want to spread the credit around, because
it does need to be that
yeah.
way.
Well, sometimes one person can take credit for spearheading and saying, yes, I pushed against all odds, but in this case, it wasn't Toney.
I know it wasn't. I mean, like I say, it was a whole bunch of people were involved. I mean, a lot of people in the community, what they wanted, their insights and stuff of that nature. Yeah, there was a lot of people involved in this. So it wasn't just Toney, ramrodding something through to get it done. It's not the case at all.
So what do you think of the No Kings movement?
Well, I just find, looking at your notes, I hadn't actually thought of it that way, but I like it.
Well, you're welcome to stick around, because I'm going to talk about No Kings now for a second, okay?
Well, just as a quick thing, the contrast between the mayor we currently have, Joe Conrad, and Toney are markedly different. We had an issue with contractors here in town. Then we went for a long time. I mean, quite a few years, so 4 or 5 years, where almost no construction was going on in the city of Benson, and
housing or otherwise.
Exactly. It was very, very. It was a real blight, and so what we've discovered is that the firm that we were using out of Tucson for doing our plans and our plan approvals and inspections and stuff had an individual who was just belligerent and nasty and hard to get along with and everything. And the contractors hated him. And so we, Joe instigated a thing, and him and I got together, and we had all the contractors, about 7 of them, come in, had a private meeting with us, and they spilled their guts. They told us exactly what they felt like. And so as soon as we discovered what the problem actually was and why they wouldn't work and why they were upset about it, and this, like I say, all this was going on with, with Toney and stuff. So that's, that. But anyway, so Joe, then I went ahead and had this interview with all these guys. The immediate response to that was we went to the county, got rid of their contractors. Their contract was up. And so rather than renew that, we went to the Cochise County and did a mutual agreement with them for they did our plans and they did our inspections. And immediately afterwards, I mean, it was
day and night.
Yeah, all of a sudden we went from like 1 or 2 houses being built a year to 40 or 50. So it was a big, huge difference. I mean, and so our local contractors were, just stepped right up and something like, and that just took, all that took was just a meeting with the county and, some back and forth with them a little bit of negotiation, and things worked out pretty, and that's the type of thing I'd like to see done. And that's what Joe had done. And, and as opposed to, what Toney would just talk it to death, as opposed to, something
making it happen.
Making it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, the whole issue of housing is going to continue to come up.
Yeah.
And the naysayers, again, here's my invitation of them. No, nothing.
I'm surprised that no matter what you do, there's always a group of people somewhere that are not going to be happy about it. And so there's just nothing you can do about it. And it's just like the ADI thing. They would come to me and screaming and yelling at me. And, I had some personal issues with my own family with this problem. And I couldn't hardly believe, the way they were acting. But it's...
well, look, let me put it this way. I tried to stay above the fray. By the way, I want to give kudos to Derek Finn.
Absolutely.
He stayed out of the fray. He didn't call anybody names. He didn't, get down in the gutter, as I said, way, way back. That's how these people operate. Yep. They'll call you a liar without that. I mean, I'm going to raise this issue again because to me, this is the epitome of hate and misinformation. But they said George Scott was on the payola for ADI because he supported it. And they repeated that without any evidence whatsoever. And that's just an outright lie. So if you want to talk about credibility, Just think about that every time you think about them going, ah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was stunned. I'd sit there in a council meeting, when I had to call the public, and you're not supposed to say anything and involve, in response to what they're telling, and sit there and stare right at you and tell you that you're committing fraud, you're taking money under the table. And as a matter of fact, it was a joke between my wife and I said, yeah, you should see my new Corvette,
Yeah, right.
It's just ridiculous. And I just wanted to tell him, hey, I'm just the guy that lives down the street. I'm not trying to, ruin the city or anything. We're trying to make it better.
I still ask George every time he goes to the mailbox. I say, any kickback checks there yet? Because they haven't shown up yet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's amazing to me. And like I say, we'd have people sit there and stare right at me and call you all these names and tell you you're doing all these things, and I'm just appalled. I couldn't believe it.
Another thing, a lot of people in this community knew my father. Dad was one of the most respected people, and I'll get to this in some detail in a moment. But when he passed away, we had to move the service 3 times because there were so many people calling saying they wanted to attend. He told me, he said, if you ever use the F word, you've already lost the argument.
Oh, yeah.
And he was so mad at me the first time he heard me use that word in high school. I don't use that word. No, I don't. But these naysayers, they love to use it. Oh, they think it makes them strong, and I don't know what.
But I have stories I could tell you, which I won't. But I wanted to say, as far as
Derek, tell me one story.
Let me say something before I forget this.
Derek Finn, great guy.
Derek Finn is a fine young man, and to lose to him was an honor. He is a good man, and
I'm glad to hear you say that.
The very next day, I went over to see him on Wednesday. On Tuesday was the election. Wednesday, I went over to see him in the morning, and I told him that he had 100% of my support. I would do whatever I could to help him in his new calling, and he is a good young man. He's a good replacement. He's actually better than I am, I'm sure. He's young, healthy, and he's better looking than all that. So
he wears a cap, which you don't.
Yeah.
You might think about that.
Yeah, I know. My dermatologist tells me I need to all the time. So I'm jealous of your hair.
Oh, yeah. I get that all the time. Yeah. When I was in Florida, I was an anchor for Fox News at the WPEC WFLX affiliate. And I used to do a lot of scuba diving, and people would get on the boat that would recognize me, and they would never say anything about the reporting I was doing. The men mainly would say, is that your real hair?
Yeah.
Like it's important, I guess, to some.
Well, when you don't have any, or when you're losing a lot of it in wholesale quantities.
Well, I had brain surgery 2 years ago twice. Yeah. And had to shave my head for that. And a lot of people, most people didn't recognize me, didn't have an idea of who I was. But I had one lady at Walmart. She was checking out. She turned around and looked at me because I grew a goatee. And she said, I can't believe you live here. Turns out she thought I was Bryan Cranston, the guy that plays Walter White in Breaking Bad. And I'm going to have to show a picture because at the time, yeah, I did. I looked like that. But that's good stuff. When my hair started growing back, it literally exploded.
Maybe I should shave my head. That's what I said.
That's the lesson there.
Yeah, I'm not going to try.
All right. Stick around. I want to get your perspective on something else I'm going to talk about here. Let's talk about No Kings, okay?
Okay.
All right. So this is a little bit of commentary. So I'm going to refer to my notes. Let's talk about the No Kings movement, why that even adds more reason why Toney King Sr., Toney King is a senior, why he should not be mayor. First of all, he's a senior king, and the No Kings movement doesn't like kings. We have a few blue-haired people in this community who attend the No Kings protests. I'll talk about that in a moment, who have gone. So I would suggest, Tony, you think about changing your name. You can be Tony Ayatollah Sr., or Tony Emperor, or Tony Trump. I just thought of that one, but not Toney King. I would suggest Tony El Grande Jefe, knowing that you want to be the big boss, or Tony El Grande Queso, the big cheese. But that's cultural misappropriation, so I don't know if we ought to go there. Now, I want to say this about the No Kings participants, and a lot of people just kind of shake their head and say, what is that all about? So the sources for what I'm going to read you come from the Daily Mail and Fox News and a couple of other resources. You can Google psychotherapist Jonathan Alpert, I believe he's from New York City, who talks about this phenomenon. I'm going to read you what he has said. These are direct quotes. Protesters are craving community validation. Albert sees that hunger for connection as central to the No Kings phenomenon. People are craving community, and this gives them a place to channel that. They're surrounded by others who validate how they feel, and that validation can be addictive. That fleeting catharsis, Albert added, also masks something darker, and this is where I think a lot of people fall when they think of the participants in the No Kings movement. A lot of times, he says, people are unhappy in their own lives. They may have anxiety or anger, and they project that onto others. That's partly what we're seeing play out at these rallies. So the No Kings movement allows people to feel belonging and community. Sharing grievances with like-minded people feels good, and this is the line that I love, but it doesn't necessarily change anything. So you're wasting your time. You're not only looking stupid, but you're wasting everyone's time. But you may feel better because you can share the hate. Got any comment about that?
It seems to be that's the case. Like I was mentioning, I do have in my own family, and I was telling my brother who's on the council currently, just from this new election. I said, "Man, I don't even recognize you anymore. You've turned into something completely different. I mean, from what I'd known him his entire life, and now all of a sudden over this whole ADI thing, he was like Jekyll and Hyde." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, who are you? I mean, what's going on with you that you'd start to act like this?" It's amazing to me. Yeah, this is.
Well, let me give you a phrase that I learned when I was doing a little bit of research into some of the psychotherapy involved here, and that is moral preening. Have you ever heard of Dr. Gad Saad and a book that he's written called Suicidal Empathy?
No, but I know the doctor though. Yeah.
So I have the book and I'm reading it right now. And suicidal empathy is mainly the empathy. Okay, well, I'm not going to. I could talk all day about this, but if you're interested, it's a great book. It talks about why people go overboard. A woman who is raped by a Muslim.
I read that.
Rapist.
Yes.
Actually,
will
defend him because she thinks that she's victimized Muslims all her life.
Yes.
That's called suicidal empathy. Well, when I was reading the book and doing some research, there's another term that comes up, and it's called moral preening. And this is where I think the ADI opposition fall and why they're so virulent in their rhetoric. Now, it's one thing to have a different opinion, and thank goodness we have people with different opinions, okay? But the moral preening is when they can go back and look in the mirror and say, I'm so righteous, I'm so good, I'm so pure in my motives, when all it is narcissism, and narcissism to a large degree. And I realize I'm using a big word for you people, narcissism, but look it up and see if it applies to you. I guarantee you'll be shocked. Any comment about that?
I was going to say, I know somebody whose picture is right next to that definition of narcissism, but I'm not going to go there.
Well, there's about 20 pictures now.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, that's a good segue about your brother being on the council now. I did a podcast with Darren Hayes, okay? And we didn't slam the opposition. In fact, he was
watched it,
yeah, he was very open and honest about, and he said maybe we didn't do enough to, to publicize this or talk to the public. And anyway, it was a good podcast episode. He was honest and open, and he invited people to call him and talk to him about the issue. Well, and this is where I'm going to go into some detail. Ross Kaplowitch, one of the candidates at the time, took the podcast, contrary to copyright and intellectual property laws, hijacked it, downloaded it, edited it, put it on some page, I guess the No Aluminum Planet page, I don't know. Totally illegal. And at a recent forum that we had after they were elected, I called him out on it. And unfortunately, at the same time that this happened, this is about I'm not going to go into dates because It's self-evident to anyone who is involved. But at the same time this happened, and I'm not accusing anyone, all right? I want to be absolutely clear about that. But within a couple of hours of that podcast being downloaded to be re-edited and used illegally, somebody planted a malware in my whole system that was intended to erase all the hard drives. Well, I brought that up at this forum. Kaplowitch didn't deny it. What he said was, oh, and you're blaming me for that. No, I never blamed him. I'm still not blaming him, but I'm saying it's pretty coincidental, wouldn't you say? Got any comment?
Well, I have to tell you that Ross just lives right directly across from me. I could throw a stone and hit his house on a good day. And anyway, if I can, I'd like to stay a little ways away from that because I have to live with him as a neighbor, and my brother too, as a matter of fact. But in anyway, yeah, there's some coincidences that happened with that one and some others on that I've seen elsewise that are that are very. I wouldn't say that Ross would do anything like that. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know the man.
But there's others that who are involved in the movement, though.
I do know the man because he stole something from me. Oh. It is. It's stealing intellectual property. So I know that about him. I know that they have denigrated this podcast, but then why do they have to turn around and use this podcast in their campaign? That's a question. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I understand that too. Yeah.
So,
but you know what? There's others involved who might be doing the dirty work, as opposed, they might be, whether they're cognizant of it or not, I don't know. But they might be somebody, just a helping hand.
Well, Boyle or Mark Boyle, your brother, did say in that same forum, he kind of laughed. He said, "Well, it's not that hard to download a podcast." Of course, it's not.
Right.
But he didn't say, "Well," again, nobody denied it. And he didn't say, well, we didn't do that. Nobody did. So am I accusing? No, I am not accusing. I don't know. I have no evidence that Kaplowitz hacked into my system. But I'll tell you this, whoever did prevented me from being able to podcast for 3 weeks. And that included a lot of, 3 podcasts that are public service. One is an example that I posted yesterday. That is to promote the athletic department's attempt to raise funds to keep kids in athletic programs at Benson High School. So whoever tried to hack into my system kept me from doing some good work.
It actually damaged your hard drive. I mean,
Oh, yeah, that computer right there, that's a brand new computer. Had to get my other one completely scanned and I don't know the term, but they erase everything.
Oh, yeah, they reset it.
Had to reformat.
Right.
Found 2 pieces of malware. And again, this didn't happen because of the firewalls, but the malware was intended to destroy all the hard drives.
Was the person, the tech that did the reinstall, was he able to see a date that was installed on there?
Oh, I'm sure. I didn't ask, actually, but yeah.
There should be some kind of note on the computer automatically.
Computers
a little bit. I used to build them for hobby, but anyway, not for a while.
Well, the one that they used to hack into my system is in the landfill. They turned it into a brick.
Oh,
but luckily, I was able to recover all of the podcast material, all of the files from that computer before I threw it away. So I don't know. I guess I could take it back and find out.
No, it's just curious because if the date that it actually was installed on the system might be, appropriate,
indicative. Yeah,
kind of help you to understand.
Well, I'd like to know. Well, then Kaplowitz said well, those clips were sent to me. Well, I love that. You know why? Because now it shows a conspiracy.
Well, that's true.
It was illegal to use them. If someone sent those clips to him, they were the ones that hacked, or not hacked. Again, I'm not accusing anyone. They were the ones that downloaded the podcast. So that now that's 2 people involved, right? So that's a conspiracy. Anyway, I have what I'm going to call the Kaplowitz disclaimer, which is going to be, it's already on the front intro of the podcast, which says, you do not have permission in whole or in part to use any part of this podcast, rebroadcast or edit it or,
It's a shame you have to do that. But
yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
But I call that the Kaplowitz disclaimer, and I'll do it at the end of every single podcast from now on. So, just ask yourself, Mr. Kaplowitz, if you want to let me know why you did that in civil terms, maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. But I want to know why you did that. Not the malware, because I'm not accusing you, but why did you feel you had to violate or skirt copyright and intellectual property laws to further your own campaign? That speaks to character. I don't think you have any. So there you go. Any comments otherwise to wrap things up?
Well, there's probably a lot I could say, and my wife is probably gritting her teeth. Keep your mouth shut, Pat. Yeah, don't cause any problems. No, I'm gonna
Bow out.
I'm gonna take the fifth on this. Yeah.
What are you gonna do now?
I'm a busy person all the time. I'm not gonna be sitting around doing nothing. I'm really involved in my church and things of that nature. And so
what church is
I'm
that?
a Latter-day Saint. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So I've got more than I can handle most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me. Well, I won't go there. The whole Latter-day Saints thing, but let me ask you.
Sure.
If you're a member of Latter-day Saints and you are baptized in another church, you're excommunicated from LDS, right?
Yes, I looked it up. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I know where you're at.
Do you want to say it or shall I?
You go ahead. I'm gonna defer this to you.
Well, I'll wait until I can ask Toney King directly.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. This has been an interesting discussion. You can come back anytime. Update us on what you're doing, and if you think there's any issues behind the scenes that need to be looked at, let me know.
You bet. I'll do
All
it.
right. All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Oh yeah. Well, this
It's
is
fun.
Podcasting is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my first shot, so I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Oh, you want to do it again?
Well, if I fit, yes.
All right. Good deal. All right. Well, listen. Want to thank you for being with us once again. I am your host, Jeff Oldfather. Here's the Kaplowitch disclaimer. Without express written permission, it's illegal. It's a violation of copyright and intellectual property laws. Take any portion of this podcast in whole or in part and reuse it for your own means. That's about as simple as I can say it. I'm trying to keep things simple here so that you people can understand. And before I go, there's one other lie that Kaplowitch and Boyle would perpetuate that I have to refute. They said during the forum that I referred to, they said that I never reached out to them to give them an opportunity to do a podcast, which is a total lie. I did a podcast called the Empty Chair Podcast. So I said, hey, I'll fill the empty chair with anyone from the opposition to ADI who's willing to have a civil conversation. That was an open invitation to Boyle, to Kaplowitch, to anybody who was opposed. Well, apparently they didn't want to face the camera because they sent their minion, and that young lady insisted on recording the podcast on her own to assure quality assurance, which isn't done. She can't do that. You can't do that. So the podcast never happened. But I did make the invitation. On that note, catch you next time.